my name is Benny, and my infographic is on the impacts of the Lao Secret War, which were U.S. military bombing operations on the land of Laos in the midst of the Lao Civil War. Here's my visual model, as well as my color model, using variants of red and black. The text used in my visual model is also similar to a typography I'm using, which is the Illustrator's default Myrid Pro, which has very similar thickness and serifs. The right is my layout model, which is more vertical compared to my visual model, which is horizontal. And here's my finished infographic with those models as my basis for most of my designs. So my infographic is able to exploit 5 forms of visual potentials by transforming information into a visual representation. For example, the appearance. I exploited the visual potential of the appearance related to my topic by showing the type of bomb used in the war, known as a cluster bomb. I initially wanted the bomb to appear with the title, but I believe I could convey more information about the bomb by creating lines with information rather than just the icons. So the line contains information about different parts of the bomb. The color of the bomb also complements the realistic pictures on the timeline to show the realistic colors of the bomb, as well as sort of an aged look with the brown color. I exploited the visual potential of my first numbers by using the size of the pie chart to convey the proportion of the total number of victims. The numbers below it show exactly how many victims there were. The colors match with the numbers to portray the different proportions. And the big numbers are also used to really show the impact as well as the size of the pie chart itself. I exploited the second visual numbers by using different colors to distinguish different types of data being shown, but also similar data, as all of them contain bombs that were used. The elements are also slanted because I wanted it to fit in my layout model and how it was designed. And there was also a sort of a slant in my visual model on the bottom element. So I wanted to recreate that sort of slant with my numbers model. So the colors are used a bit randomly, just using gray, red, and brown with the realistic colors. The big numbers on the side are used to really show the impact in the millions for each different type of bombs used in the war. For example, the top one being the bombs that fail to detonate. The middle one are the active bombs, which are still dangerous to people today in Laos, and which is what my model is really trying to convey. And the bottom one is the impacts of all the bombs used during the war. For my time model, I tried to emulate my visual model's time display initially, but I didn't like the amount of information I could show, such as the dash dates like 1958 to 1959. It just didn't fit with my visual model. So instead, I decided to use the rightmost element in my visual model because it was really long and contained headers to help me really explain different parts of my timeline. I also included the realistic picture up on the top, which is a part of Laos that was bombed, to show the impact of the cluster bombs during the war, like the one my visual model showed. And I adjusted the colors to make it look older, just like the visual model did, which had like brown, black gradients on the side. And I reflected that off my bomb as well to show sort of agedness. So initially for my relationship element, I wanted to use a map to show the directions of the bombs, but I found it to be a bit difficult to show that relationship that made sense in context of the war. So instead, I made the relationship in the context of the civil war that took place, which included 2 opposing factors, the Kingdom of Laos and Pathet Lao. So each faction included different allies and supporters, and just like in my visual model, I wanted to show smaller flags that kind of portrayed the allies for each faction. I also changed a bit of the color to fit with my color model, as some of the flags were a bit too bright or off red. So I adjusted all the red colors of the flag to be just like my color model. I didn't adjust the other colors because I felt in my visual model they had realistic colors in those flags, so I wanted to keep a majority of them looking the same instead of changing those colors. For my infographic, the location or map that I really wanted to emphasize was just like my visual model, so I wanted to create a really big map. And I created this map using only certain angles and marked the areas that have been most affected by the bombs with different colors, and also leading lines to show the names of those provinces. I didn't decide to use this one because I felt that it didn't show enough information or enough context about the war at the time. So for my final, I decided to include the surrounding countries because they played a role in both factions' relationship, which is placed right below my location model. And these maps are blown up in my infographic because I wanted to emphasize the areas of Laos that are still affected by the bombs in the ground. For my layout, I initially decided to use my visual model as well, but with a longer timeline and no bottom element. I changed it because I didn't feel like the bottom element fit. So I created I found a vertical model that had big content areas in order to be able to place all my visual elements, especially my map, and also my timeline on the right side, as I needed an entire space on the right to fit my timeline. So initially when I created my layout, I had a difficult time figuring out where to place elements because I didn't know exactly what story I wanted to tell. But as I started messing with it more and really finding out the details of the war, I first created my title, which helped me figure out the rest of my layout. The title being the impact of the war by the use of cluster bombs. So that's what I first wanted to portray, is information about the bomb itself and information of how the bombs were used and the impacts of the bombs itself. So I wanted to give context to the main weapon used in the Secret War that is now banned all over the world. To the right of it, I decided to choose the entire line of the timeline because it was the biggest or longest element, and it would lead people's eyes down onto the rest of my model, which included my map. And the map is emphasized and blown in proportion, just like my visual model, because I wanted to convey information about different locations in Laos. The numbers on the side are also blown up to really show the total impact of the victims by the bombs above it. And below all of that is the relationship model, in the reason of why this war even started was because of these two opposing factors, mainly the US against communism, which is Pathet Lao. And it really showed I wanted to show the details into why the Secret War came to be. So this was the process and the creation of my final infographic on the Lao Secret War.